What's going on, Alabama fans? This is Patrick Greenfield here for AL.com. This is Alabama Recruiting on AL.com with our recruiting writer, Nick Alvarez. It's sponsored by Inline Lighting. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring us. And we have a big topic today, actually two big topics as we head into LSU week. Bama's still with the #1 recruiting class in 2023, but our big topic that we're going to go is five-star quarterback Julian Sayin. I'm doing five-star because in the 24/7 composite, that is what he's ranked. He's the #1 player in California for 2024. He's the #2 thrower in the nation. I want to say the other thrower quarterback is going to Ohio State, per usual, Alabama and Ohio State. So, hey, Nick, break it down with Julian. What can you say about this kid?
Yeah, so off the top of that, Alabama fans are going to want to know, what does this kid play like? And I think the easiest thing to do is maybe to compare it to some of the other quarterback prospects we talked about on this show. So when I talked about Eli Holstein and Dylan Lonergan, I mentioned their arms first, and then their legs were available to them, though that wasn't part of their calling card. Julian Sayin is, you put on his tape and like you could swap out Ty Simpson's tape, and it looks very similar. Like it's a lot of it's a lot of like moving with his feet, like not just moving the pocket, but like plays designed to get him rolling out because he's a cannon of an arm and a great way to use it. Like he has a 25-3 touchdown to interception ratio this year. He's on pace to throw for over 3,000 yards on 68% passing completion percentage. Like this is a kid who gets quarterbacking right now. He started as a sophomore last year. He won 11 games. This year, he's won 9. And he's about to head into the playoffs. Like this is a home run win. And when you look at it, you mentioned Dylan Raiola, the Ohio State commit who committed a while back. Arch Manning was an outlier for the 2023 recruiting class. That's why all this stuff came late or later than usual. If you look back in the last couple of years, the blue chip prospects.
As far as everybody waiting on them being able to spot or dominoes in the sense.
For sure. Yeah, the blue chip prospects are committing earlier. If you want to look back to Alabama's past quarterbacks, Tua, Jalen Milroe, and Bryce Young all committed before their senior years. Ty Simpson committed in February before his senior year. Like the timeline moves up. And now I believe 4 or 3 of the 5 top 5 quarterbacks in the 2024 class are now either committed to a school or a crystal ball prediction to a school.
Sure.
So the fact that between those 3 finalists, Georgia, who got their own quarterback a couple weeks back, and LSU, who Alabama's playing this weekend, that's like a pretty good win. And as Brian Kelly, he's done a good job recruiting quarterbacks. They have some other options. This is like a dynamite win, especially when considering the other thing we're going to talk about. We don't know who the offensive coordinator for Alabama is going to be next year.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Let alone 2024.
I was going to ask you. One thing that I find interesting about Julian Sayin is just another. I mean, we obviously could bring Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. Another California quarterback coming out of the South, because I know Sayin had Georgia and LSU in that top mix. Interesting that these SEC programs are able to go out west and continually, get into this breeding ground. And also interesting that you're not finding that talent, in the South. I kind of find that as an interesting part, that California keeps having the top quarterbacks in the class.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting as you kind of see more evaluators kind of get out there, more camps get out there, and these kids are going to be able to show themselves more without having to travel. Elite 11 had their finals out there last year. I'm sure we'll see Julian and Elite 11 down the road. And I guess to shout out some Southern quarterbacks, I think Jaden Davis from North Carolina, he is, I think, one of the top 5 state to Michigan. But you do have.
There's been an odd a treasure chest of Southern California quarterbacks in recent years. But actually, let's go into the Bill O'Brien part, into Julian Sayin's commitment, but also some other tight offensive prospects, and what you were saying about Bill O'Brien's commitment to Nick Saban almost being over.
Yeah. So in April, prior to the NFL draft, the Boston Sports Journal reported that O'Brien had made a 2-year commitment to Nick Saban. This obviously being the second year during his time as offensive coordinator. We saw Nebraska, rumors linking him to their head coaching position at the NFL teams have chimed in. But it's of note. So Saban said 2 things I found interesting during his during his press conference announcing yesterday on ESPN. He said, 1, he wants to get coached hard by Saban, which you just got to love. And 2, he said he wants to get coached hard by Bill O'Brien. And having a player say, okay, he believes in something with Bill O'Brien, I think is of note. And, we talked enough about how players commit to schools, not coaches.
Sure.
Still, for a quarterback, an offensive coordinator is one of the lead guys coming in, if not the head coach. And so to have that dynamic is pretty impressive.
I also think for Bill O'Brien, you have to have, this is an opportunity always, and not saying that you're not going to take another job, a head coaching job, or definitely an NFL job, but the wealth of talent that you get to mold at Alabama, especially after he's already had a career. This might be a very nice situation for him to just kind of, hang out in the crimson and white with Nick Saban, mold Julian Sam, mold Jalen Milroe, mold Bryce Young into and a little bit less pressure. I know Alabama OC is not no pressure, but a little bit less pressure than a head coaching job. So
yeah. Well, we were talking before the show. 3 of Alabama's 4 2024 prospects, which is ranked 5th for 247 Sports, they're offensive players. Perry's Uno Thompson, Martavius Collins, a really, really good tight end out of Georgia, and now Sayan. So like these are playmakers. Like these aren't like guys you add to the class. No, they're highly coveted prospects. And for Alabama to land them while also, like we mentioned, no new news in 2023, but they're still working there. That's still not done. It's a really good sign.
Sure. Hey, let's go back to 2023 real fast. Where do things stand? It's been kind of a slow football season recruiting wise. Once the season started, we haven't not had a lot of news on the Bama front. What can you tell us about the class at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's been a fair amount of wait and see for Alabama, and not in like they need to do work, but in just the tires are getting kicked down the road a little bit.
Yeah.
The 2 biggest names I think to watch, other than the Carver kids, like weekly note of them.
Yeah.
But I would say that like Keon Keeley is one to watch. I think it's down between Bama, Ohio State. I think he's gonna come back for another visit. His decision will probably go toward end of December or end of November, or December. The other big news was butchering his first name, but one of Desmond Ricks, one of the best 2024 cornerbacks, reclassified.
Desmond, that's not hard. That's not.
No, there's an Assassin's Creed reference. There's an Eli Ricks going on in my head. There's way too much.
As you were saying, though.
But yeah, so he was one of the best cornerbacks in the 2024 class. He reclassified to 2023.
Okay.
He's considering Alabama heavily. He's projected to go to FSU currently, but that's a premier player, one of maybe the 5 best defensive backs in the class currently, that came up on the board 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's like stuff is happening, stuff is following out, but I think all those premier prospects, they're getting into playoff time right now.
Absolutely.
And then any decision is going to come on that December 21st early signing period.
Okay. All right. Well, one last thing I wanted to talk to you about was, you said this weekend, Alabama, LSU, and LSU's creeping into that number 10 spot. So we got a top 10 matchup, possible top 10 matchup next week at Ole Miss. What about the recruiting front, locally for Alabama, whether it's in Louisiana, Mississippi, or some of the Alabama prospects visiting those places?
Yeah. I mean, so we already talked about how Sayan picked Bama over LSU. Yeah. I think that maybe getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I'd be remiss to not mention Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss. He's a Pike Road talent, won the Class 5A state championship game 2 years ago. Was a 3-star coming out of high school. And then Lane Kiffin found him I use that loosely, but Lane Kiffin said, "Hey, come lead my offense," essentially. And he's now has over 1,000 yards.
Committed on AL.com, by the way.
On AL.com, for sure.
We feel proud about that one.
Yeah, and like that was something that, similar to this year, Lane Kiffin was getting tied to a bunch of other coaching positions.
Yeah.
And then, he stayed committed. And I don't think Alabama necessarily missed on Quinshon. I mean, they obviously got, at the time, a 5-star in Emmanuel Henderson from Geneva County. They got Jahmyr Gibbs in the transfer portal. But like, I look in your backyard, like our Auburn's sake too. Like, we'll get into that later. But like, that was a premier player, and you don't see that happen often, I guess.
Agreed. I mean, at the same time, he was choosing between Auburn and Ole Miss. He just took his time not to go to Alabama. And you're right. He had Emmanuel Henderson, who's obviously transferred over to wide receiver now that he's in Tuscaloosa. We'll see if, we'll see how that develops over next year if they bring him to the back to the backfield. So, Well, Nick, thank you very much. Any other things that you want to say, about this class? It feels like we've been in this number 1 neutral setting for a while. And we're going to get into this final part of the month for both the college football season and the playoffs in high school. And that's going to just blend into December 5th for us.
Yeah, no, the run's coming. I'm already mentally preparing myself for just like the 12-hour day that's going to come with that. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Of this, like, these commitments are going to come quick. We talked a lot of how the majority of these blue chips have already decided. But there's still that crop. There's still those 5, 6, 7 players who can change a class on their own, and Alabama's in the mix for multiple. So,
all right. Well, thank you guys. Enjoy the LSU game this week. Obviously, we got Ole Miss next week, so it's a packed 2 weekend. Austin Pay, and then the Iron Bowl. It's going to be a wild one as we get into the playoff race. Patrick Greenfield, once again, this is Nick Alvarez, our Alabama recruiting writer and our Alabama beat writer. He fills in. He's been doing it all season. So Alabama Recruiting on AL.com, sponsored by Inline Lighting. I appreciate y'all for watching, and we'll see you next time.